This is working in the performing arts industry, and we want to know about your understanding of performing arts organisations and job roles. And what we'd like to start with is, can you just talk to me a little bit about what a receiving house is? Receiving theatre, same thing. Or what a producing theatre is, or what an art centre is, or all three of those, or any one of those. So just tell me a little bit about those sort of performing arts organisations, if you can.
A receiving theatre, that's a smaller group, and they could have just one manager on the stage, stage manager, and maybe one assistant depending on how big it is.
Right, what does a receiving house do?
They've got contracted performers.
Right, but what's the main thing that a receiving theatre does? Receiving theatre.
They get other plays from different directors from other companies.
Okay, so that's a receiving theatre. What does a producing theatre do?
Producing theatre, they plan their own plays and play it in their own theatre.
Okay. What about an arts centre? Do you have any idea about what an arts centre does?
They make props for
arts centre. An arts centre like Colchester Arts Centre. What does a Colchester Arts Centre do? Have you got any idea about that?
No, because I haven't been to.
All right.
Can you guess?
They make paintings and different scenery.
All right. Tell me about what an actor does.
An actor learns his lines. They could only have a short amount of time to learn them in.
Yeah.
They need to try and bring out the personality.
Yeah.
The body language.
Yeah.
Of the character.
Okay. And just tell me, what's sort of actor's life like? What sort of life have they got?
Well, 80% of the time, they're not acting because they're looking for work, but they'll have another job as well as to try and earn income.
Okay. And how do they work with directors? Tell me, when they're doing plays, tell me about the work they do with directors. How does that happen?
Well, they can be contracted. The director will have contract hours for them, or so long within the year to do different plays with the director. And
what happens in a rehearsal room with an actor and a director?
They'll go over your lines.
Yeah.
They'll make sure your makeup and everything's okay for the play.
Yeah.
And
So they give you the script, whatever, you get the script, and then do they just sort of leave you to work it out for yourself? What you're supposed to do?
Well, you learn that they tell you to learn the lines, but if you need help, they'll probably have somebody to help you if you need it for people with disabilities. There's
But I get my script from the director, and does the director then just sort of say, right, okay, the show's on in 2 weeks. Bye.
It'll be one.
They
Well,
walk out the door and they leave you. Do they do that?
In a sense, well, they'll probably help you a little bit, but most of it you've got to learn yourself.
Okay. So what did I do when we were doing Blood Brothers? How did I sort of help you? What did I?
You helped us with our lines when we needed it, and if we were struggling a bit, you gave us that extra bit of time to go over our lines and prepare for the play.
Okay.
Okay.
And what about working with an agent? How does an actor work with an agent? What does an agent do?
The agent goes to different gigs, looking for fresh talent, and even actors become agents after a while if they've got the right business sense and confidence and got good contacts.
Yeah. And what does an agent do for an actor?
Helps the actor to get roles for like TV, radio, and film.
Okay.
And you're not off a film. You're not always gonna be in one location.
Yeah.
So you're expecting to travel a lot. It could be performing in castles, forests.
Yeah.
You could be riding horses, vans.
Okay. And what's the sort of business relationship? How does an agent get paid if they look after an actor? How does that work?
Well, I know an agent gets paid 17,800 a year.
Well, they could do.
They could do,
yes. Okay. But how do they make that 17,800?
Looking after
Yep.
the actors
Okay.
and making sure they're doing well in their job. And
But where did the money come from? How do they get the money? How do they get their wage? How does that work? They find work for an actor. How do they get paid?
they'll probably get the money off the actor. Well, some of it off the actor for helping them.
Right, okay, yeah. What sort of percentage, roughly, do you think it is that they get from the actor's fee for finding the actor work? What is it, roughly, do you think?
Probably 20 or 40%. Well,
20 or 40%?
10.
Okay, yeah, 10 to 15 maybe, yeah. Probably more like 15, I would have thought, in this day and age. Okay, what does a stage manager do?
Stage manager makes sure all the props are in place, that the actors are in the right places, they get on stage at the right times, make sure everything moves smoothly.
And what does the assistant stage manager do? How does the stage manager work with the assistant stage manager, for example?
The assistant stage managers help the stage manager, so everything's not just being put on him. If it's a big stage, depending on how big the stage is, you could have one or two.
Okay. What specific things does an assistant stage manager do? Do you remember? Specific things that an assistant stage manager does.
I know they do help the stage manager.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. But, you know, the assistant stage manager is in rehearsal. What does an assistant stage manager do in rehearsal, for example?
Help the actors with their lines if they need it.
That might be true. What else do they do?
Help with makeup if they're short-staffed.
Yeah, could do, but more specifically, what do they normally do? What's one of their main tasks in a rehearsal room that the assistant stage manager does?
I've forgotten.
Okay, that's right. And what about a stage manager working with an actor? How does that work? What is, you know, how does a stage manager work with an actor?
They'll make sure that they're doing the jobs properly.
Yeah, sure.
Helping them with the lines there to make sure they're all alright.
Okay.
Because I mean, if it's a big production with lots of different elements and lots of scene changes and so on, the actors are going to be focusing on their performance, aren't they?
Yeah.
So what help do they sort of need? They're not going to be thinking necessarily about all of those technical different things, are they?
But make sure
About their
that they don't
performance.
get wound up while they're acting. If it's
So maybe helping them be in the
Yeah.
right place at the right
Yeah.
time, maybe helping them with anything that they're slightly anxious about, making sure they're in the right sort of place,
yeah.
you know, things like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
could be. It's a bit general, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anything else you want to say about, you know, producing house or being an actor or an agent or a director or anything you've missed out?
Producing house is
Yeah.
you get leaflets like in the papers,
Okay.
you telephones to order tickets,
Mhm.
internet
Yeah.
to order them.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
All right. Okay.